Joining us for the next hour is State Senator John Yudichak and State Senator David Argall. Senator Argall, tell us about your proposal about property tax.
Well, several years ago, about 70 different taxpayer groups all across the state brought me a proposition. Essentially, they were so sick and tired of trying to deal with an unfair school district property tax. They said, let's eliminate it. Let's drive a stake through the heart of it so that it can never, ever, ever come back. We introduced it. We got about maybe a dozen, 13 co-sponsors. It didn't go anywhere. We reintroduced it this session. We're now up to 26 votes. That's the number of votes you need to turn an idea into a law. That's what we're trying to do this session.
This is something that has been talked about for decades. What makes you think it might happen now?
I don't think we've ever had 26 votes before. We've never had 26 co-sponsors. I think with every county, as they go into a nasty reassessment battle, or as the property taxes for the school district escalate and go up and up and up, I think people are finally fed up. I think the public is demanding this change.
How would your bill go about getting rid of property taxes?
Essentially, we would eliminate it, and we would say, let's put on a broader sales tax. Let's move the sales tax up from 6 points to 7 points. Let's broaden the income tax to 4.34%. That brings in over $11 billion. So we can then eliminate the school district property tax dollar for dollar in every school district in Pennsylvania.
Is that going to be enough money?
Absolutely, yes. There's also an escalation clause built into the bill, a COLA, if you will, so that every year school districts get a little bit more.
Senator Yudichak, you are on the other side of the aisle. Is this something that has equal support in both parties?
Well, of the 26 co-sponsors, as it turns out, 13 are Democrat, 13 are Republican. This is as bipartisan as it gets in Harrisburg. It is a broad coalition, all corners of the state. It is an issue whose time has come. We have gone through several decades and several failed attempts, whether it was Act 1 in gaming, where we took a billion-dollar approach, but that hasn't slain the beast. We haven't been able to eliminate property taxes. And I think this proposal, which is a tax shift, we're very clear about that. We're shifting to what we believe is a more modern way to fund our schools. For me, it's about eliminating property taxes, and it's also about getting a 21st century education funding system in place. Right now we have a 19th century agrarian model. It's not the way we should fund our schools. We shouldn't place all of that burden on the backs of the homeowners.
Welcome to the PCN call-in program. I'm Brian Lockman. For the next hour, we'll be talking about property taxes, always a popular topic on this program. Our toll-free number is 1-877-PA65001, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at PCNTV. So this is a tax shift. Who does it get shifted toward, and who does it get shifted away from?
Well, we shift to sales tax, and we shift to a higher personal income tax, and eliminate property taxes across the board. We believe that's not only good for funding our schools, it's good for the economy. I mean, some of the things in the reports that have come out, when you see that Pennsylvania ranks about 46th in economic competitiveness, 41st in out-migration of students that are graduating from our college going to other places in the country. I think this has the potential not only of funding our schools in a better way, also turning around our local economies in terms of small businesses that now would have their property taxes eliminated. That's good for communities that Dave and I represent, whether it's in Tamaqua or Nanticoke or Wilkes-Barre or Hazleton. This can be something that turns around those local communities. I look at the school districts that I represent. I represent the heart of the old anthracite district. There is less population, there is less property tax base, so you are condemning those students that happen to live in the zip codes of the old mining legacy, that they are not going to get a adequately funded education, because there's just not enough revenue to generate locally. This way we go to a state model. I mean, think of the insanity that we have 500, because we have 500 school districts, 500 different tax policies. Now, if you're a CEO of a company and you walk into Pennsylvania and say, wait a second, there's 500 different tax policies, and depending on where I live, that's going to be the tax policy for my school district. And if my zip code's not right and the wealth is not in that zip code, then my child doesn't get a fully funded education. That's what we're trying to break. It's a big task. That's why it hasn't happened. But 26 co-sponsors is the best position we've ever been in to eliminate property taxes.
Will the state then decide what each school district gets? State has complete say over how much?
We're replacing, if a school district is bringing in $10 million in property tax revenue, the state, the following year after this bill would become law, would give them $10 million from the expanded sales and income tax. So it's a dollar-for-dollar replacement.
So as populations shift, how do you adapt for that?
Oh, I think we would have to make some adjustments in the future, but right now we're just trying to get this bill into law. People have been talking about this, I think, since the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. John talked about how old this system is. I mean, I had a grandfather who taught in a one-room schoolhouse. They paid him partially in vegetables in the 1920s. We don't do that anymore, but we're still stuck with this same old-fashioned, archaic, grossly unfair school district property tax. It's the first issue that comes up at any of my town hall meetings. It doesn't matter which of the 6 counties I'm in that I represent. It's almost always the first question.
So under your plan that you both support, somebody's taxes will go down, but other taxes will go up. Who will pay more?
It will depend on, what are they renting, are they high income, are they moderate income? But this bill is based on their ability to pay. What do they make in the income tax? What do they spend in the sales tax? Right now, the way we fund our public schools, how big is your house? When was it built? What color did you paint your roof? When was it assessed? When was it spot reassessed? That's crazy. I can't believe the Supreme Court hasn't declared it unconstitutional by now. They haven't. That's why we're trying to act.
And our research shows that most, if not all, certainly every homeowner, every small business owner is going to see a reduction. And you would have to spend $50,000 on the new goods taxed under the sales tax and the expansion of the sales tax base. You'd have to spend $50,000 to get to the level where that would be more than you were paying in property taxes. So most folks are going to see a huge reduction, whether you're paying $4,000 or $5,000 in school property taxes, having that eliminated. Yes, we're going to have to raise that revenue and do that through the personal income tax and the sales tax, but most people come out a winner in this program.
Before we go to the calls, Senator, you brought a chart in that shows where your co-sponsors are for this.
Yes, the blue districts from Erie to Philadelphia to the Poconos to West Virginia, we've never had this much support before. That's why we've asked the Majority Leader to bring this up for a vote in June. We'd really like to send it over to the House of Representatives and let them work on it over the summer and fall.
Now, we have had people say on this program before that this property tax is not unpopular in Philadelphia.
Well, that was perhaps before they had a really nasty reassessment battle. We now, for the first time, have 2 Democrat senators from Philadelphia who have signed on to the bill as co-sponsors. That never happened before, and I think that was the result, that they were hearing from their constituents the same kind of complaints that John and I hear every day.
Well, this is a popular topic. Our lines are all lit up already. First caller is Ronald from Allentown. Go ahead, Ronald. You're on the air.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm calling to let you and the people who live and rent in apartments know how devastating SB 76 is going to affect them. Eliminating property tax is like giving the landlords a huge sum of money. Not only are they getting a tax break, they also get to keep the money from your rent they used to pay those taxes. What a double-dipping bonanza this would be. And what does the renter get? He gets a smaller paycheck, a bigger store bill, and a harder time to get out of rent. I have this suggestion to these people who are complaining. They say, if you can't stand the heat, get out. If your property taxes are getting to be a burden, it is time to downsize or try being frugal.
Response?
All it will take once this bill becomes law is for one landlord to begin to lower their rents because they're going to be saving a considerable amount of money, and then the next landlord is going to do the same thing, and the next landlord is going to do the same thing. We believe that the free market will help to drive those rents down. When I talk about this back home in the district, it's overwhelmingly popular with both property owners and renters. They get it. My mail in the districts that I represent, just north of Allentown, is 8-1 in favor of this.
And I would suggest that someone that has spent their lifetime investing in their home and investing in their community, played by the rules, they should not be forced out of their homes because we have a failed property tax system in Pennsylvania. We should not be forcing those seniors out of their home or working professionals that are starting out, not having an opportunity to purchase a home and build up that community. I mean, you're seeing, areas that Senator Argall and I represent, the housing stock in many cases are 75 to 100 years old. And so investments aren't being made. One of the groups that has been tremendous in this is the Realtors Association, because they recognize that's going to be good for the housing market in Pennsylvania. Eliminating property tax is going to be good for the building, for the construction industry. So I would disagree. I don't think we should be forcing people out of their homes by overburdening them with property taxes.
Next caller is from Palmyra. Ron, you're on PCN.
Good evening, gentlemen. Here we are talking about this again. I've heard about this for 40 years. I'm a 78-year-old man with a bunch of friends about the same age, and we've all have our houses paid for, but we have this mortgage hanging over us. Every year it goes up, up, up. Tell me that we can pay that on Social Security raises. It doesn't work that way. They go up, up, up. There's a gentleman here that tore down his garage and house because it was falling down and he was paying taxes on it. They reassessed him after he cleaned it all up, and they almost doubled his taxes because he made his property more valuable. On we go with all the stories. How many people? I know at least 3 people that are in jeopardy right now of losing their homes because they're 2 years in arrears of not paying the property taxes, and the school board don't care.
What do other states do?
There's a mixture of different approaches. Some have a lot more property taxes. Some have a lot less. We, of course, are heavily dependent on it. And when I was at the Senate Finance Committee making the pitch for this bill last week with the good senator who represents Palmyra, Mike Fulmer, we both summed it up essentially this: no tax should make you homeless. That's what's so awful about the current system.
10,000 sheriff sales a year, people being forced out of their homes. And the caller makes a great point about improving your home. And now your property tax is going to change because your assessment is going to change. Some of the critics say, well, the personal income tax and the sales tax could be volatile, and that may be difficult for funding our schools. Well, first of all, about 75% of the state budget is funded by the personal income tax and the sales tax. But property tax is also volatile because people can either challenge their assessment. In Pennsylvania, in 67 counties, the counties decide whether or not you're going to have a reassessment of your property taxes. Maryland does it differently. The state does it, and they do it every 3 years. The system we have right now, it's fragmented, it's broken, it is not adequately funding our schools. It needs to change.
Next caller is from Berks County. Diane, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Senator Argall, I am a member of the PTCC, so we've been following this bill very, very closely. And I want to thank you for your comments and that you did last week in front of the hearing. It was very impressive. It's amazing that you read something from the 1980s and that they started trying to deal with this, and they still have not tackled this beast. The question I have is, I have a feeling that what they're basically doing is running the clock on this bill. When are we going to get it out of the Finance Committee onto the floor of the Senate for a vote? And then back to the House, which everyone was really pretty much appalled at what happened when they tried to get it out as attached to amendments, where people that were co-sponsors actually turned against it and voted for House Bill 1189, which I don't think any of us have any hope that that's going to cure this beast.
I've spoken to the chairman, Mike Brubaker, of the Finance Committee. He's indicated a willingness to move this in the very near future. Just yesterday, I spoke to the majority leader. He understands the overwhelming desire of a lot of the senators to move this bill, and I think, in my mind, the sooner the better.
What are the nuts and bolts here? What has to happen legislatively?
It needs to be approved by the Finance Committee. It needs to be approved by the Appropriations Committee. It needs to be approved by the Senate of Pennsylvania. It then goes to the House of Representatives, where the same process works. And then it goes to the governor. The governor has indicated to a representative from Berks County that he will sign it if we can get it to him. And so that's the process.
Can that be done in an election year?
Sure. If anything, it might be easier to get it done in an election year because, as I'd indicated, every statewide survey that I've seen, including one that the Realtors recently released, is overwhelmingly in favor of this approach.
We have on the phone Sam Danisco. He is with the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, Vice President of Government Affairs. Sam, hello. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. What's your view on this bill?
Well, this is a very large piece of legislation. It's an issue that has a lot of energy behind it. From our standpoint, we represent, we're the largest broad-based business advocacy association in the Commonwealth. We represent businesses, large and small, businesses that own property, businesses that lease property, businesses that sell items that are subject to the sales tax currently, and businesses under this proposal that will have items that they sell that will be also, and the sales tax will be increased in certain instances, and exemptions will be lifted. So it's a very large piece of legislation that we're currently digesting. The legislation is essentially predicated on a tax shift to the personal income tax, which to 4.34%, up from 3.07%. As you probably know, and your viewers know, that businesses do pay that personal income tax, and it is of concern to us and our membership. And the sales tax is also increased too. So there is a shift from school property taxes to sales and income, and it is of concern to our membership.
Are your members supporting the idea that they won't have to pay property tax on their businesses? I mean, is there a savings there?
Sure. In some instances, there are savings. That's a great question. Businesses that do own property pay school, municipal, and county property taxes. They will see an abatement of, not a total abatement, but they will see a reduction in their property taxes. So in some instances, it is a win for certain businesses. On the other hand, there are a good amount of businesses that lease their property, and there's no guarantee, if you will, that their lease payments will go down. So they do not see a decrease in their, they don't see any tax abatement on any side. What they will see is paying more in their income tax. And our small businesses operate on razor-thin margins. They're just trying to make a bottom line. And to some businesses, what we're hearing is a increase in the personal income tax would be devastating. So, we're concerned about potential job loss. We're concerned about less money, less collateral that businesses are able to put back into the economy.
With all the different facets there are to this bill, do you expect the PA Chamber to take a position on it?
We've taken the position of opposing the bill. We're working with a vast majority of stakeholders on our side, representing anywhere from the retail industry to the grocery industry, financial, legal, newspaper industry, along with a lot of poverty groups and faith-based groups in looking at the bill and identifying where some issues are for those particular industries and public interest groups.
Sam Danisco, our guests in the studio may have a question or two for you. Senator Yudichak?
Well, I certainly respect Sam. He does a great job. He and Gene Barr, the president of the chamber, do a fabulous job advocating for their members. When you look at the status quo, however, the status quo is that over the next 4 years, those business owners and those homeowners are going to look at a $4 billion property tax increase. That's unacceptable. And still, we will not adequately fund our public school system. I don't think there's any disagreement that the property tax system is broken. Now, how do you fix it? How do you get to $11 to $12 billion? That's the rub. And when you're talking about change this big, it's not going to come easy. And I know there are certain special interest groups, there are certain organizations, certain businesses that don't want to be on the sales tax list or don't like the idea of the personal income tax going up. But think about that. The status quo means a $4 billion tax increase over the next 4 years on homeowners and businesses. That can't be good for business.
Let's have Senator Argall have his say, and then Sam Danisco, you'll get the last word.
Sam, all that I would ask is that you ask your members, that you go back and talk to them just the way that John and I have in our constituencies. In the last week, the Greater Reading Chamber of Commerce and Industry, these are your members, asked the question, and when their businesses looked at this, 68% of them said, yes, do it. They hate the status quo. They hate the current system. Only 18% said no. Another 13% weren't sure. In our business, a 50% margin, that's called a landslide. I'm going to ask the Schuylkill County Chamber to do the same thing. I think John and we can ask Carbon County and the Lehigh Valley and the Poconos to do the same thing, because I really think if you talk to your members, you're going to find out that this is as popular with them as it is with the people that we represent as senators.
Sam Danisco, your response.
Yeah, very good points from both senators. I completely understand them. To Senator Yudichak, thanks for your kind words. Yeah, the status quo is problematic. The status quo on a lot of things are problematic. And we're not sitting back and accepting it. We're definitely amenable to looking at a more targeted approach that's means tested. We like to look at those who truly need property taxes. From what we're told, there's a good amount of senior citizens that are in homes and fixed incomes that are truly in need of property tax relief. And I understand that's also shrinking the base, and that may not be the panacea, but we don't want to sit back and be a deterrent to moving forward with something that's really meaningful. To Senator Argall's question, you have our word. We continue to poll our members. We have calls almost daily with different sectors of our membership, just trying to find a way and understand what this really means. But thank you for your point. And to your viewers, both of these senators, especially Senator Argall, this is a Herculean task, and these guys are up to it. Really champions on issues, and it's really good to see lawmakers in Harrisburg really stand up and fight the good fight, regardless that we're on the other side of the issue. It's a healthy debate. We're willing to have it. And the viewers and the constituents should know that these guys are in for a fight, and that's why they're elected to be in Harrisburg.
Sam Danisco, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Chamber, thanks very much for calling in.
All right, guys, have a good night.
Thank you. Let's take another call. Jim from Pittsburgh, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. First thing I want to let the senators know that I'm 82 years old. Over 40 years ago, I fought to have the homestead exemption come in, where we would be rewarded for fixing up property because you're making a better place to live in. So the Homestead Act passed. But what I see now, they're creating things where the homeowner, I'm talking about a home.
Guess we lost him.
Yeah, I think he's right. There have been so many attempts in the past. Senator Yudichak mentioned a couple of them. We've tried to tweak it, we've tried to cap it, we've tried to reform it. Nothing has really worked. That's why we believe the solution is complete elimination. And as I said at the beginning of the show, we didn't make this up. This was come up. 70 different taxpayer groups started this. They drafted the bill. It's now up to 80. They handed us the football, and we're running with it. That's where this idea came from.
And those 70 groups represent about 70,000 citizen lobbyists, and they're the ones that really deserve the credit. Senator Argall's absolutely fighting a good fight and doing a fabulous job of gaining co-sponsors, more than we've ever had. But those citizen lobbyists that are coming to the Capitol, bus trips to the Capitol in their own community, in their local media, they are really driving this issue.
Nick from Coaldale, you're on PCN.
Yes, I just want to say I'm in Senator Argall's district, and he has been pursuing it. I'm glad he is. And unless I'm missing something, I just don't understand why people don't think it's fair. I told him when he first started this, I was glad to see it. I'm a senior citizen. We're on fixed income. I've never even had kids, and I pay a property tax. I just paid it 2 weeks ago. So I hope this just doesn't go back and forth, that they can pass within the next year. But my point is, I wouldn't care if they raised the sales tax to 8%. Everybody would pay. Why should people be penalized because you own property or a home? Don't people see that? To go 6 to 8% or 7%, if that would be a suffice, I wouldn't care if it went to 8. everybody would pay, and people, including people living in apartments that don't pay property taxes now and help their school. That's my point, and I hope he keeps pushing it, and I hope it passes and not just keeps going back and forth.
Is there the danger that if the money for the schools is all coming from the state, that the local school boards will lose control?
I don't think so. You know, I mean, the only thing that we're taking away from the school boards is their ability to raise property taxes every year. That's a big issue where Nick lives in Coaldale with the Panther Valley School District. It's a big issue in every single school district. This is just such an old-fashioned, unfair model, and just people are sick of it. They see that it doesn't make any sense.
They raise taxes every year because their costs go up every year.
Sure.
What will this bill do anything to contain the cost
as people's income goes up, that means they'll pay more income tax. As people buy more, that means they'll pay more sales tax. Yeah, we believe that makes much more sense.
In the, you know, some of the critics, they point out local control. The local school boards are still drive the academics. We are simply eliminating their ability to raise property taxes. They can still do an earned income tax or personal income tax through a voter referendum.
Locals will be able to raise those taxes.
If they have special needs, yes.
If they have a special needs capital project, they can do that with the support of their voters in that school
Which
district.
is really the way a lot of other states do it. We know it sounds kind of radical for Pennsylvania, but some states have been doing this for a long, long time.
So the state personal income tax would go up by
From 3.07 to 4.34.
And then the local governments would impose their own?
They could, if they got the approval of the voters, they could add, I think, another 0.25 on the income tax if they had a building project or some kind of a special need. But they couldn't just do it. They'd have to ask the voters.
Take another call. Jeff from Bethel, you're on the air.
Good evening, gentlemen. This is something that is desperately needed. Not just the seniors are losing their homes. It's a lot of people. Personally, myself, 35% of my mortgage is escrowed into taxes, and it's just horrible. These people that are saying this won't work, I don't understand. I think if the average homeowner has more disposable income, he's going to go out and buy more things. He's going to get more services. Right now, this is just crushing the life out of people. I see many people losing their homes. If people are allowed to keep their homes, they're going to spend on the homes. They're going to make it worthwhile. You're going to see beautiful neighborhoods rather than boarded up houses. So please, gentlemen, push this. We desperately need it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Jeff makes a great point. I mean, we see it in our town hall meetings all the time. There's nothing more adversarial than the issue of property taxes in a community. And think of that. We are pitting homeowners that want to invest in their home and their community, want to raise their family and grow old in their home. And we are putting them at odds with the most important thing that state government does, invest in education. And we've made that an adversarial relationship. So instead of talking about the quality of schools, making smart investments in our schools, and having the best schools, we're talking about property taxes and people being forced out of their homes. So we want to break that chain. We want to break that adversarial chain and fix a broken system, move away from the property tax, get to a broad statewide tax base so that we can adequately fund our schools and keep folks like Jeff in their home and investing in their home and their community.
Next caller is from Lehighton. Sherry, it is your turn.
Hi, my name is Sherry. I'm wondering why that the approved foods on a WIC list are the only ones that aren't going to be taxed according to HD 76. It says we can't buy any kind of white potatoes without being taxed on them. No jarred salsa or pasta sauce. No fresh herbs and spices. Dried fruit or trail mix. That doesn't make any sense to me. Honey, no. Sugar-frosted cereal is on the WIC list. That's allowed. Now, that shouldn't be healthy.
Can you explain what
Sure.
her point about the WIC list?
I think one of the original goals of the bill years and years ago said put the sales tax on everything, all food, all clothing. it just couldn't get a lot of people support. People said, oh, no, you can't do that. So this is a compromise. This is said, all right, we'll put the sales tax on non-WIC items, but basic foodstuffs would continue to be tax-free. As far as what's on the WIC list and what's not, John and I don't have any control over that list. That list is developed somewhere in Washington. But we just thought it was a reasonable compromise, and as I said, it was drafted by those 70 taxpayer groups. They were the ones that thought that this made sense.
And there's a $50 limit for clothing, so that those that may be at the lower income of the spectrum on the lower income side, that it is not as regressive as it potentially could be.
Each item, $50?
Yes.
We're going to take a break, go back to the phones in just a minute, but I want to tell you about some programming coming up on PCN. Following this program, On the Issues with Brendan Boyle, he will talk about his campaign for the 13th Congressional District, which is in Southeast PA. That's next at 8 o'clock. On tomorrow night's call-in program, we'll talk with Senate Majority Leader Dominic Pileggi and Senate Minority Leader Jay Costa about the Pennsylvania Senate agenda. That's live tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And if you can't get in on this program with your calls, you might want to try tomorrow night. If you're a fan of PA Books, there are two things you might want to know about. PA Books is now a free audio podcast, so if you miss a program or if you want to catch up on an older program, like some of our Civil War programs we've done, you can download it from the iTunes Store and listen to it whenever and wherever you like. Just go to the iTunes Store and search PA Books on PCN. And also, if you watch PA Books, and who doesn't, like us on Facebook, just go to Facebook and search for PA Books, and you'll get schedule updates and background every time we do a new program. And as far as the network goes, you can like PCN on Facebook and follow us on Twitter to get updates on all of your favorite PCN programs. And while you're there, let us know what you think. And if you like the programming you see on PCN, thank your local cable operator. We get our money to operate from the cable companies that carry our programming. We get no money from the state or federal government. Let's go back to the phones, and let's see. Ken from East Norriton, you're on. Go ahead.
Gentlemen, East Norriton, Pennsylvania. Senators, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. And I followed these bills through the House and Senate for as long as they've been alive. And again, thank you for your courage in moving forward to this. Specifically, I'd like you to address another issue, which is about homeowners which have paid off their mortgage and they have equity in their home that's now being stripped away by the ever-increasing taxes. So as they move toward long-term health care, and they need those dollars of equity when they no longer can take care of their home and it's appropriate to move on to a different kind of facility and so forth. If they don't have the equity, then who's going to pick up the tab for that? Secondly, and this goes back to the Rendell administration, it's a part of the solution to the funding for public education is a consolidation of school districts. He asked for 501 down to 100, and we went from 501 to 500. And as far as I'm concerned about local rule, there's only so many vendors for curriculum and textbooks and so forth like that. So how many choices do they have to make except about uniforms and new stadiums and the salaries for teachers and so forth? I think I've said enough. I can see you grinning and making notes. Thank you, Senator.
It sounds like you're talking about my parents, well into their 70s. Several years ago, they bought a smaller house. Dad didn't want to have to rake the leaves anymore, and the steps were getting, I think, steeper and steeper in the old house. And so they moved into a smaller house in the same neighborhood. And the next thing you know, the school district was suing them. Talk about a welcome to the neighborhood letter, because they thought that perhaps that they should be getting more property taxes. The current system is just crazy. We also understand, however, that it doesn't really matter where the money's coming from, that if we don't control the spending, we haven't controlled the problem. And so there are several parallel bills moving at the same time. I have one that just passed the Senate that is mandating a study saying, let's see if we can't put all school district employees into one big contract for health care. Certainly, if you buy insurance for 10 people, it's a lot more expensive than if you buy it per person for 10,000 people. And so we do think that that's half the battle right there.
And I'll plug Senator Wozniak has long championed the idea of consolidating school districts. Of course, that Pennsylvania went through that many years ago. But that's something, whether it's health care, whether it's special education, which issues that are well beyond a local school district's ability to pay, to keep up the pace of health care, the cost of special education. So Ken makes a great point on looking at whether or not 500 school districts are too many.
We have joining us via Skype Sharon Ward. She is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center. Sharon, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
What is your organization's position on this bill?
Well, we're opposed to Senate Bill 76. We believe that property taxes have paid for public schools in Pennsylvania for 150 years for good reason. They're stable. They allow local communities to have a say in spending and allocation of dollars. And, schools are very important to Pennsylvania's communities and to our economy. And we're concerned that Senate Bill 76 really takes a big bite out of public education, which is going to hurt our kids and our economy moving forward.
Let's get each of the senators' comment on your comment, and then you can have the last word.
Yeah. I'm trying to help public education. My father, my grandfather, both taught in the public schools, as did my mom. Both my kids have graduated and done exceedingly well with a public school education. But I just can't defend the status quo, and quite honestly, I can't imagine that anybody can do that with a straight face. I think that the current system is incredibly unfair, and when I'm looking at poll numbers, the Reading Eagle 2 years ago, people called in 90-6 in favor of this plan. KQV radio in Pittsburgh, 74% in favor. The York Dispatch, 73% in favor. I really think that this is an idea whose time has come, and this special interest kaleidoscope that's against it, I think I said it last week, I think these groups that are opposing it are on the wrong side of history.
Sharon Ward, are you defending the status quo?
Well, look, I think that I disagree with Senator Argall in one respect and agree with him in a different respect. The first is that property taxes are not uniformly high across Pennsylvania. They're high in Senator Argall's district, and they're high in Senator Yudichak's district. We've looked very carefully at property taxes across the state. There are 30 districts out of 500 where property taxes are high compared to people's ability to pay for them. In contrast, there are 129 districts where property taxes are actually very low. So this is not a problem that everyone is clamoring about across the state. It doesn't require destroying the public education system. What it requires is a targeted solution to those communities and those individuals that can't afford property taxes. Where I agree is that we are relying too much on property taxes, and that's because the state is not paying the appropriate share of school funding. In most states, 50% of school funding comes from the state, and only 36% from the local property taxpayers. We're the opposite in Pennsylvania. So that is a problem that we have to fix. And I don't think that completely destroying the public education system is the appropriate way to go. I think there are better solutions.
Senator Yudichak?
And I agree with Sharon. The state needs to pay more. The state needs to invest more in education, and this is the vehicle to put the state on that level. It's a way to make the state more responsible. I think the system that we have where Harrisburg can say, let the locals raise the taxes, let them raise the revenue. And to the point of stability, I look to my district, Luzerne and Carbon counties, where the mines have closed, the factories have closed, we have the highest unemployment rate for 48 straight months. The schools cannot raise the revenue. I have one school district right now that is currently going through a labor dispute. They were devastated by the floods of 2011. They've lost homes. They've lost businesses. So their property tax base is eroded. Where are those schools going to raise money to adequately fund those schools? We are putting all of that burden on the homeowner. All that burden on the property taxes. Senate Bill 76 is a way for the state to get fully engaged, get up where they are making the proper investment in our schools. That's where I fundamentally disagree with Sharon. We should be investing more in schools, and Senate Bill 76 is a creative way to get to that.
Sharon Ward, final comments?
Oh, I just say that the bill, the way it's drafted now, actually really cap school funding so that the crisis that we're seeing in our school districts, where programs are closing, too many kids in a class, music, art, sports all being eliminated, Senate Bill 76 will make those problems permanent in Pennsylvania. And I think that's moving in the wrong direction, particularly when there are better options. We don't have to go that far. We can have well-funded public schools and also find targeted property tax relief for struggling homeowners.
Sharon Ward, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Brian.
Take another call. Bill from Chambersburg, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, or good evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
My concern is just being a newly Pennsylvania resident since 2010, and when I bought my house, I had questioned the school property tax as being legitimate. And nobody really knew why. It was just there. Nobody questioned it, and then all of a sudden it started picking up traction. Upon my further reviews and just digging into this, and I picked up the Pennsylvania Constitution and read Article 8, Section 1, where it says that all taxes shall be uniform within the same class of subjects. And just reviewing that little snippet just tells me that it's the uniformity of this tax is being pounded on the homeowner's responsibility. I've actually had conversations with the Pennsylvania Department of Education Chief Counsel. I've had thorough discussions and emails that identify that he had told me that the Pennsylvania Department of Education did not have the authority to tax. And reading some of these articles that I've seen in the paper, that some of these counties have asked permission for the Pennsylvania Department of Education to give their overall approval to tax. To me, that's basically a division within their chain of command to identify that one administrative agency, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, cannot tax, but give their local schools authority to tax just homeowners. And the way this is basically said is homeowners have an invisible lien on their properties owned by the school districts. And to the betterment of my knowledge, that no government entity can own or possess private property for revenue or profit. And further review of SB 76, I do agree it should be passed without any hesitation. Let's just put that forward there.
Okay, let's let you go and get some response.
There's a lot in the Constitution that it talks about we should have a thorough and efficient system of public education. You know, the system that Sharon is defending right now, some school districts get 15% of their funding from the state. Some school districts get 50, 60, 70%. I just can't imagine that anyone can defend the status quo. And quite honestly, what the property tax elimination groups have told us is that if Senate Bill 76 doesn't pass, they're going to the Supreme Court. We just can't imagine how the justices would ever allow this system to continue. And these defenders of the status quo, if I tried to make that argument back in my district, I'd get fired.
Now, there was a report from the state's independent fiscal office that found that staying with property taxes would generate $2.6 billion more than your bill by fiscal 2018-19. How do you address that gap?
It would produce more because the property taxes would continue to go up. That's the problem we're trying to solve.
But if they don't go up, will there be less money for schools?
Well, we're giving them dollar-for-dollar replacement. And then next year we're giving them more because of the cost of living. And next year we're giving them more. And the year after that we're giving them more. We just think, that we believe is reasonable.
And to the point Sharon was trying to make, well, we're going to, the cuts that happened over the last 4 years, that we're going to enshrine them because we passed Senate Bill 76. That may not be the case. The next governor, or by June 30th this year, we may have a severance tax on natural gas. That will be additional funds that could be driven into our public school system. The General Assembly and the governor can make a decision anytime they want in the state budget to put more money in the schools, and we've done that through the Accountability Block Grant and other means. The governor has a proposal on the table now. So that doesn't mean just because Senate Bill 76 is talking about the dollar-for-dollar replacement, a revenue-neutral bill, and then a cost of living that's going to go based on the CPI. As folks' wages go up, then more money will go to the school. But we'll still have an opportunity to put, whether it's the governor or the General Assembly that says we want to invest more, Marcellus Shale, another $500, $700 million into the schools. That's all possible through the state budget process.
Let's go out to Butler now and hear from Jim. You're on, Jim.
Thank you for taking my call, gentlemen. It's nice to talk with you. I know Mr. Argall when I used to live in Schuylkill County. I have a couple questions. One is, back many years ago, we had a big debate relative to whether or not we were going to have gambling in Pennsylvania. We had the gambling, and this was going to eliminate property taxes. Of course, the only thing that ever was talked about was school taxes. They don't talk about county taxes. They don't talk about township taxes, borough taxes, anything else. Now we're going to, again, have property tax reform, not with gambling. I don't know what happened to that money. It never came down, most of it. It's gone into something else, and then we've added more gambling, and, you know, we can only gamble so much. But where do we stop? We have to stop someplace. And you can talk about Marcellus Shale, we can talk about whatever, but there's only so much money to go around.
And what we would do with our bill, quite honestly, the gaming proceeds that today flow into school districts for property tax reduction. In my school district in Tamaqua, I think I get a $150 reduction, which is nothing to sneeze at, but it's nowhere near elimination. And that has helped to, I think, drive the need to do more on this bill. As I'd said, different legislatures failed in the past. In the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, they tweaked it, they reformed it, they tried to cap it. None of those worked. That's why we're going for complete elimination of the school district tax.
John from Christiana, you're on the air.
The first thing I want to do is to thank all of those 26 senators, 2 of whom I'm watching on the TV, for essentially sticking their necks out and being a co-sponsor of Senate Bill 76. Gentlemen, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. The other thing is, I don't know whether either one of you are familiar with or remember the General Assembly putting a task force into position in 2006. And the task force's job was to determine how monies were being spent in all school districts. And if they thought recommendations, money could be saved, to make recommendations for that to happen. 1 year later, 2007, that task force finished its job and turned in its final report, which offered a page-and-a-half worth of recommendations that they claimed would save $1 billion over a 5-year period of time. I would ask, are you familiar with any of those recommendations that have been put in place so far? To my knowledge, none have.
I know one of the suggestions back in when I was still in the House had talked about this idea of a standardized contract for health care. There's some thought that could save us $400, $500, $600, $800 million. That's real money, and so that's one of the reasons why we're trying to push that idea forward.
What are the drivers that cause property taxes to keep going up every year?
Well, I think health care. Special education cost, really beyond the control of the local districts to control. We've talked about creating a statewide contract on health care, create greater efficiencies, to John's point, that we have to look at controlling the spend side. And again, the idea that you're going to have 500 different taxing bodies, 500 different ways to purchase health care or deliver special education. So, you know, the 26 senators that have stepped up, I appreciate, you know, that we have Senator Argall, Senator Fulmer, Senator Yudichak, really not just on Senate Bill 76 and trying to eliminate property taxes, but Dave's bill on health care. Yudichak has been on the special education task force. We're trying to approach this not only from the revenue side, the property tax side, but also on the spend side, and creating more efficient schools.
Mike from Moorfield, you're on PCN.
Yes, hi, good evening, and thank you again, both senators, for really advocating for the homeowners, including myself. My question mainly is when would we know one way or the other? I know the subject has been talked about for year upon year upon year. We've been struggling to keep our house. I'm 25 years in the human services field. I work to help other people, and we could barely keep our own home because of our school tax. I'm trying to get a handle and understanding on how long that we would really know that there's a determination that we are going to find relief.
In my mind, the bill is ready. It needed some tweaking. There were some problems in the original version. We've presented an amendment to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee chairman tells me he's ready to call the roll. Then we need to get the vote in the Senate, and as I'd indicated earlier, in my mind, the sooner the better. I want to get this bill over to the House of Representatives and let them begin to work on it as well.
Would it take effect right away, or is there a phase-in period?
There's a slight phase-in, but no, we believe that if we can get this bill passed and to the governor this year, it could take effect very shortly after that.
Next call is from Johnstown. Dick, you're on the air.
Thank you. A complex issue. I'm not sure which way I want to go on it, but a curious question. The woman that Skyped mentioned something about the potential of harming the economy. Let's use Philadelphia as an example. If someone lived in Philly and New Jersey didn't have the sales tax, would they be prone to cross a bridge if they're open to buy their goods and services there? And of course, along the perimeter of Pennsylvania, there are many towns and cities that would be closed perhaps to an area that doesn't have such a sales tax. Have you folks considered this? Thank you.
Yes, most of our neighboring states have higher tax rates, whether it's on sales or sales tax or whether it's personal income tax, with the exception being Delaware, of course. So I think even with the increases, we would remain very competitive. Even the border communities that touch our neighboring states, we still remain very competitive.
Next caller is Dennis from Salix. Is it Salix?
That's Salix, correct.
Salix. Where is that?
Pennsylvania.
Okay, you're on the air.
County. Yeah.
Okay, you're on. Go ahead.
Well, it's great that you want to do something with property tax, but when I got a $200 deduction under that Homestead Act, and that was wonderful, and that only lasted for 2 years, because what ends up happening is the county ended up taking that $200 and I ended up losing my Homestead Act. I'm afraid what this will do is you'll eliminate the school tax, but it'll only increase the county taxes because they'll see a revenue. We've been paying this money, and they'll be looking at it and saying, well, we know where we can get some money, and these counties are all hurting. So my question is, how do you guarantee that we're going to keep that savings that we're going to get on a school tax, that the county doesn't start to accrue more taxes to us because they see a windfall here?
There's no guarantee. That will be up to the voters and up to the county commissioners in every single county, just as it is today. But please remember, the one thing that we can guarantee is that if we kill the school district property tax, it'll never come back. Previous attempts said, oh, let's get rid of a quarter of it or a half of it. People didn't trust it. They said, oh, yeah, sure, you're gonna reduce it for a couple of years, and then in a couple of years later, you're going to whack us with the property tax and the sales tax. When Governor Casey, God bless him, he tried a version of that. It was the worst single defeat for a referendum question in the history of Pennsylvania. That's why we're going for the complete elimination of the school district property tax.
Arthur from Bucks County, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm impressed with the participatory nature of this program. I haven't watched it much before. I'm an old press spokesman for the U.S. Senate. I came in with Governor Schaap as his top advisor, and I presented a plan then for tripling the gross revenues of the state of Pennsylvania through the use of its keystone placement in our continent. And that plan is still sitting around. I could deliver it to some interested party. But my question is, to this program is, your committee seems to know what the hell they're doing in terms of response of the public, but you don't contact the Transportation Committee. Nobody in Harrisburg talks to anybody else. I'm an old campaign advisor to presidential candidates, personal friend of Harry Truman. I'm 94 years old, and I'd like to see you guys get together on a plan that would triple the gross revenues of Pennsylvania in 30 years.
Well, let us eliminate the school district property tax first. Then we can move on to some other issues. But as you know, this is an issue that the state's been arguing about for generations. And, you know, I know that every single senator that puts their name on this bill is essentially opening them up for criticism. You know, the next time I run, I'm sure I'm going to get TV ads against me because I wanted to put a sales tax on diapers or caskets or whatever. They probably won't mention the fact that the trade-off is a complete elimination of the school district property tax for every time. And so if you live in one of the districts where the senator has put his or her name on this bill, please, please thank them.
We're just about out of time. I want to squeeze in another call or two. Dave from Walnutport, you're on.
Yeah, my only question with this, and, you know, I'm getting close to retirement age, and this would be great for me too, but are we passing the costs then on to a future generation that can't afford it? Because, like, you'll have relief for landlords, but, you know, that'll be picked up by their tenants. Now, I understand that their rent includes part of the property taxes, but it'll be picked up by families with young children that are starting out. I mean, are we just passing the cost on to a future generation?
I mean, as the state senator for Walnutport, I can tell you that whenever I ask the citizens in your community, is this a good idea, they believe it is. They tell me they believe the sales tax and the income tax is a much fairer way to fund the public schools than the way we do today.
But does this hit the people who are younger, just starting out, can't afford to buy a house right now? Their taxes go up and they don't get any benefit from the property taxes?
Well, I think the numbers bear out that the 70% of the benefit will go to the individuals, individual homeowners. There's no question this is a property tax elimination bill. But I do think in terms of the broader economy that this can help the housing market. That young family now has an ability to purchase a home. We also, from the realtors, learn that it'll increase the value of homes, those that are in their home, by 10%. That could increase the value of the home. So I think when you step back, will there be some folks paying more because of the higher personal income tax and sales tax? Potentially, yes. But this is, you know, in Harrisburg, we can never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. There's no perfect bill that's ever been passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor. This is, I think, the best approach to adequately funding our schools and eliminating a terrible tax on Pennsylvania homeowners.
Last call, David from Reading. Please be brief.
I'll be brief in regard to what Ms. Ward said with this bill destroying public education. Apparently she's ignoring the fact that since 2003, or rather 1993, property taxes in Pennsylvania have increased by 146%, while the average weekly wage has only increased by 80% and CPI by 58%. The property taxes are outstripping the homeowner's ability to pay, and if anything is going to destroy public education in Pennsylvania, it is the current property tax system.
Amen.
Well, thank you for keeping it brief. I wish we could keep going because all of our lines have been blinking. All our incoming lines have been blinking the whole night. We could probably go for 3 or 4 hours on this, but unfortunately, we're out of time. State Senator John Yudichak. Sorry, I mispronounced it. Yudichak.
It happens all the time.
And State Senator David Argall, thank you for joining us tonight. Coming up next on The Issues with Brendan Boyle, he'll talk about his campaign for the 13th Pennsylvania Congressional District, which is in southeast Pennsylvania. That is next at 8 o'clock right after this program. If you did not get a chance to call in and comment during tonight's program, you can post your question or comment to our Facebook page or Twitter. I'm Brian Lockman. Thanks for watching.